In your statement about the invasion by Russia of Crimea, does Russia have in your view, a legal claim to Crimea?
No, sir. That was a taking of territory that was not theirs.
And do you agree that Russia has not complied with the Minsk agreement in regards to the resolution of Ukraine?
The process for implementing the Minsk agreement, as I understand it, it continues, and no a full completion of all the Minsk Accords has not yet been achieved.
So I want to get your view on the sanctions that the United States applied, and maybe I'll drill down, if I might, by asking you this first question. You stated in your statement that part of the reasons why Russia, or we were ineffective in preventing Russia, is that we didn't exercise strong enough international leadership. Would you have done, or recommended to have been done, to prevent Russia from doing what it did?
Well, Senator, in terms of the taking of Crimea, I think my understanding is that that caught a lot of people by surprise. It certainly caught me by surprise, just as a private citizen. So I think the real question was the response to the taking of Crimea that then led to subsequent actions by Russia, which I mentioned. The next action being coming across the border of eastern Ukraine with both military assets and men. That was the next illegal action. I think the absence of a very firm and forceful response to the taking of Crimea was judged by the leadership in Russia as a weak response, and therefore...
So what would you have done after we were surprised by what they did in taking over Crimea? What should the U.S. leadership have done in response to that we didn't do?
I would have recommended that the Ukraine take all of its military assets it had available, put them on that eastern border, provide those assets with defensive weapons that are necessary just to defend themselves, announce that the U.S. is going to provide them intelligence, and that there will either NATO or U.S. will provide air surveillance over that border to monitor any movements.
So your recommendation would have been to do a more robust supply of military?
Yes, sir. I think what Russian leadership would have understood as a powerful response that indicated, yes, you took the Crimea, but this stops right here.
So as I understand, our NATO partners, particularly in the Baltics and Poland, are very concerned about Russian aggression. NATO has deployed troops in this region in order to show Russia that Article 5 means something. I take it you support that type of action.
Yes, I do. That is the type of response that Russia expects. If Russia acts with force, taking of Crimea was an act of force. They didn't just volunteer themselves. So that required a proportional show of force to indicate to Russia that there'll be no more taking of territory.
And that's encouraging to me to hear you say that, because it's not exactly consistent with what Mr. Trump has been saying in regards to Article 5 commitments under NATO by the United States. So I appreciate your commitment, or your views on that issue. So let me get to the response that was done. We imposed U.S.-led sanctions against Russia as a result of its conduct in Ukraine. We went to Europe and were able to get Europe to act. The United States, in my view, wanted to go even further, but we couldn't get Europe to go beyond what they were willing to do. Do you agree or disagree with that strategy for the United States to lead by showing sanctions as we did?
Senator, sanctions are a powerful tool, and they're an important tool in terms of deterring additional action. Once actors have acted up, then we want to deter any further action on their part. So yes, American leadership is oftentimes, if not almost always, required to demonstrate that first step.
And as you understand, unless we move, and we have to move in a strong position, we're going to be the best. We're going to get the strongest reaction on sanctions from the United States. We saw that in Iran, and I know that some of us have mentioned to you the legislation that was filed yesterday. I don't know if you've had a chance yet to respond to it or not. I might do that for questions for the record. But have legislation I would urge you to take a look at that seems consistent with what you're saying here, that would provide the administration with the tools to show Russia that if you attack us by cyber, or you continue to do what you're doing in Ukraine or what you're doing in Georgia, that there's going to be an economic price you're going to pay. I take it you believe that's a powerful tool and one that you would consider applying.
Senator, I have not had the opportunity to review the legislation. I'm aware that it has been introduced. And yes, I think in carrying out the State Department, carrying out its diplomacy, or carrying out its important role in trying to negotiate to a different course of action, to a different pathway, we need a strong deterrent in our hand. It's the old tenet of Teddy Roosevelt, walk softly, carry a big stick. Well, even in diplomacy, it is useful to have a stick that is in your hand so that whether you use it or not becomes part of that conversation.
Let me ask one final question.